Okay. Um, we can do formal introductions. I mean, we've already met each other before, but I'll give you a little more insight into like specifically what our assignment is and stuff like that. So generally speaking, last time when we did the presentation, you got the concept of like, we're doing mock startups in a general sense, like building on ideas. So this is just like a second version of that. So the first time we went through a problem statement, we took it to like traction, marketing, all those things. This is just we're going through the whole nother process with that, but we're more trying to focus on the validation side. So this time around, the thing I'm focused on, I think I already sent you my problem statement. Basically, like, uh, you know, young professionals like myself tend to look at the hiring process as like a repetitive kind of thing, like when you have to input the same kind of information multiple times, and then just going through the whole application process, it just becomes a whole lot stressful for people. So a lot of times people just like kind of think about like, I don't want to apply for jobs because you have to recreate a resume, try to figure out what's best for it, try to identify all these information, references, keys, and all these things, and then send it in, and then just go through that whole process in general. So I've been talking to a lot of young professionals, and so from some of the people that I've interviewed, some of the things that they come across, we're going to discuss, but they're one end of the problem, and the position that you're in as an HR individual is on the other end of the problem. So there's like they're facing the problem, and you're on the other end is to explain like why things may be structured this way, but like you're not the end all be all, but like your field in general sense. So I'm just gonna get started with like some simple questions, kind of ease our way into it. How long have you been in an HR position?
So I've been working with HR for a little over 2 years now, 2 years and a few months.
Have you been liking it so far?
Yeah, love it. It's definitely what I want to do, and I mean, since then I've like progressed to doing a lot more. But I'm glad that like HR was always still like a part of everything I did. So.
Can I ask you why did you want to do HR?
So I graduated college with a psych major, but I didn't want to go to grad school. So I was like, well, what am I going to do with this? And HR came up, and I was like, oh, that seems cool, because like I've always been a rule follower, and I was like, oh, it's like kind of trying to improve organizations, make sure things going according to plan, people have the things they need. If they need to talk to someone, like that's kind of like psych can be involved in that. So
Okay.
so I was like, yeah, that just seems like a good fit.
I never knew that. I never knew like having a psychology degree applies to HR management, but it does make a lot of sense because you are interacting with people regularly. Um, we're gonna start talking about some of the application process, but to begin with, I wanted to ask you like, different companies have different ways of how they do the HR. So from your experience, do you guys handle your HR through a system, like an automated system kind of like process?
So it depends on what specific tasks. We do use Gusto, which does a lot of the kind of legal compliance, payroll, things like that. Everything else is a little more manual, where it's like I add people to the different platforms, like especially during the recruitment process. It's all just kind of me moving them through it, giving them the kind of supplies and stuff that they need, the information that they need to know. It's a little less automated.
So like on average, like how many, because I know you said you do Gusto for like one aspect of it, like how many systems do you kind of work with regularly to like just like to operate your job in general?
I'll just say less than 5. I know when I first started, we used a different system as well called Bambi, and that's where like all of our policies would kind of be on and come through. We've since stopped using that, and then I just would create them personally, either just by finding them on Google or just creating them myself and then kind of getting that verified through our lawyers. But yeah, so like Gusto, and then just communications platforms like to talk to people. Yeah, everything else is kind of just centralized in Gusto.
All right. So when you're transitioning between one system to another system, are you the person who directly inputs that information in, or is it like you have another means of doing it so that it's easier on your part?
Yeah.
So Bambi to Gusto.
Yeah. So actually, another one I didn't mention was Lattice, because we do our annual and quarterly performance reviews through that. and also another way for people to submit updates. So there is other personal information on that. And so I just kind of take some of the information that the individuals themselves uploaded in Gusto, and then I take that and put that on Lattice in like that profile. So
Okay.
yeah, there are some things that it's like, yeah, I'm the one kind of moving that information.
Okay. While we're on the same subject, because you were saying like there's the legal aspects, then there's the recruitment aspects, and there's like, when you're transferring things, like I want to know how many like departments do you communicate with on a regular basis, like within your organization?
Like just in like for the HR aspect, or like for my job in general?
I think like for your job in general.
And sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Like how many departments do you communicate with on a regular basis for like your job in general?
All of them. So because of HR, like I have to communicate with every individual in the organization, and then also being the director of operations, and then also the director of service operations, and then COO for Draft Studios. It's kind of like I oversee all teams that are within service ops. I oversee teams that are in Coded by Kids, and then just kind of work with the revenue team a little bit. That's probably like the team that I have the least amount of work with.
So I guess on this part, I'll have to be a little more specific, because the assessment that I'm trying to do wouldn't be fair if it's from other positions. So like let's re-ask that question. How many departments does HR have to communicate with on a regular basis? And I know it's kind of confusing because like you kind of manage multiple, so it kind of blends at time.
So in terms of teams, I'd say it's hard because it's every individual. So like in a sense, it could be all teams, but like I wouldn't say HR is specifically like would meet with a team and be like, hey, we need to discuss this or whatever. It's kind of like just on an individual basis.
Okay, that's fair.
But operations, I guess that would be like the main team that HR talks to. Yeah.
Okay. We're gonna slightly transition into like recruitment, and on that side as well, because we discussed like you communicate with operations. We understand like what you do with your job and everything like that. Now I kind of want to understand how you as HR communicate with people who are coming in, because a lot of the problems they have are on two ends. Is like when they're first applying, and then it's the onboarding process. So the onboarding process is what we just that's partly what we talked about. When you're onboarding, people have to get the information into different departments. You kind of manage that aspect. But we're also going to talk about the recruitment process, in which is the bulk of the problem that a lot of the professionals are having. I want to ask, do you, like, when it comes to like submitting the resumes and things like that, do you guys have like a database in where you store the resumes?
Not currently. I know ideally we'd like to have it automated where it gets sent and then is actually we're having some work on it right now where it automatically gets populated in Monday, which is our platform that like we'd just be able to kind of move the information through the process. Like it would take the information that they have on their resume, like name, phone number, email, all that stuff, and put it in like a Monday board. Currently, it just gets sent to like my inbox, and then I manually put that information in like a Monday board.
Okay. Oh, that's so Monday. So thank you for that, because Monday is now something that I'll have to look into, because they kind of do something similar to like what the problems that they're facing on your end, but not necessarily on the applicant's end. I want to also like, I know you touched on bases like the resumes get sent to you. How many of those resumes do you actually look at? And then second part of that question is, how much time do you spend looking at those resumes?
So I looked through all of them, and I can give a specific example actually. So we just hired a new program manager, and so there were about like 87 applicants. So they all applied through LinkedIn, and as soon as they like apply, I get an email notification that includes their resume, and like some of their information that's on their LinkedIn profile. And then I have to open their resume. I look through it just looking at key things like what year they graduated, where it, like if they graduated, what areas like they've worked in, what their current position is, stuff like that.
Okay.
And then I just kind of, but the only stuff I like really upload into Monday is just like their contact information and like other basics. And then if they like kind of meet the qualifications we laid out, or if like that's the last time I need to look at the resume of like they're not qualified for the position that we uploaded.
Okay, so I'm trying to map out the whole process from beginning to end. So an applicant may apply from a third-party software or a program like LinkedIn. That gets emailed to you. You review the resume, and then you physically extract that information from the resume. That if the applicant is, let's say, desirable, you physically extract that information, and then with that information, do you start to input it into your system? Because it's still the interview process in a general sense. So what do you do between that two periods? Like when you decide, I like this applicant, I'm going to extract that information, compared to when they go to like the interview process, because they're still not hired yet. So they're not going through the onboarding process yet. So what happens in that period of time?
So, okay, I'm going to answer your question, but well, yeah, okay. So, nothing really happens in that period of time. It's kind of like, yeah, I get the information. If they're not a good fit, then like I kind of just leave it at that. But if they are, then I input their information Monday, which is only just kind of a tool used for like organization, like keeping track of things. So that's not going to be like across every organization. But after I have that information and I've looked through all of the applicants and like we've kind of closed the applications, like let's say there's 50 of the 87 that I'm like, well, actually, oh yeah, okay. Let's just say there's like 50 out of 80 that I'm like, they're okay. I try to narrow it down further to like, okay, of these 50 who are like the top like 20. And then once I have that, then I keep that contact information and then I'll reach out to them, like send them an email to be like, hey, thanks for applying. Are you free to set up a phone interview? Which would then be our first step in the kind of hiring process.
Okay. All right. We're gonna because those you started to dive in some of the subject that we're gonna ask a little bit later. So I don't want to confuse or anything like that, but we may come back to touch up on like two of those things. I wanted to ask you, just as a general question, what are some of the, like during this whole process, what are some of the like the problems that you face on your end for like extracting information, taking down their names and still trying to transition the applicant from beginning to onboarding? Like what are the problems do you face?
So honestly, some of them it can just be solved through automation. So like I mentioned, we're working on getting an integration from like email or LinkedIn into Monday. So that way, like I don't have to update the information itself. It's just whatever information is on the resume is just automatically uploaded. But since that we currently don't have that, that's my issue is like I get a bunch of emails in my inbox of like, oh, this person applied, and I actually can't look at the resume straight from that screen. Like I have to look at profile or whatever. It takes me to where they applied. Then I have to open their resume and then write down that information.
My apologies, my alarm is going off. I know.
Oh yeah, no worries.
Okay, so with like we're gonna use Monday as an example because it might be the platform that you may be the most familiar with. Let's say, does Monday take that information and just automate it for just one aspect, or does it automate it for not just you, but for the applicant as well? Because I know I'll use myself an example on top of that. Like when we got hired, it was submit our resume, and then we still fill out the information. And then after that, the onboarding process was like different documents and different sections that we had to fill out. for like let's say guts. I can't pronounce
Gusto.
Gusto. Thank you. I can pronounce it.
No worries.
Gusto, and then like Slack and things like that. Um, but in the background, you still had to create a profile for us to have access, like their Gmail accounts and things like that. But does Monday only stick to just one binary application, or does it go across for all of the application like your like Coded by Case may use?
So it's just the one like the information there. Technically there are integrations that like you probably could, but it wouldn't solve the problem in the sense that like I still have to create their like login, or like they need to be invited to this other platform before then I can like have that integration of the information Monday into that platform. So yeah, regardless, like I have to go to each individual platform and like be like, oh, invite this user by email, um and then either they input their information or I do. But
Okay. So
yeah.
so on your end, you were able to find an application that makes some of it automated, but the let's say the other end, the applicants, and they would still have to the system wouldn't really work for them fully. They will still have to input some of that information themselves, regardless.
Yeah. So okay. So I might be wrong, but we might be confusing things again, where in the sense of like when I'm inputting them in platforms, that's like for the onboarding. In terms of hiring, like let's use LinkedIn as an example. So as far as I know, they just kind of see the job posting, click apply to job, and then it gives them the option to like upload a resume. The thing we do on our end that like could be slightly more automated in terms of like separating out who we want
Hmm.
is we can ask specific questions. So typically the ones that most companies ask are like, are you eligible to work in the US? Potentially if we're looking for someone who's like, let's say post grad, like have you graduated from college or whatever, and then they check whatever answer it is, and then that would be automated of like being like, okay, this list of people, they're ineligible because they answered like no to one of the questions you asked,
Hmm.
versus this list of people who said yes. So that's all automated and not really an issue on my end, because like I said, it can just sort through
Okay.
people.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I understand a little more better. But I guess I may also be explaining it not so thoroughly. Like because this interview is kind of like split into two. It's like generally speaking, I'm asking you how do you guys operate on this end, and then seeing if there's like if you think about like a Venn diagram, the applicants is on the other side, you're on the one side, and I'm trying to see where you guys cross, for like convenience and automation purposes. Because that's basically where like if I was to try to solve this problem in a general sense, that's where I'll be focusing, because there may be automated system that works for HR specifically just for you, but doesn't work for the applicants. And I'm trying to see if I can cross reference to an HR a system that works for both in the general sense. So I'm sorry if I'm confusing you in the general sense with some of the questions. I'm trying to make them much more clear and more concise. There are only a couple more questions, like maybe three or four.
Okay.
Um, okay. Actually, it's okay. I think that's a lot of them, to be honest with me. To be honestly, because you already explained how you communicate with um a lot of the different departments and things like that. There was one thing I just currently just slipped my mind that I wanted to ask you more about. If I remember, I personally just I'll message you about it. Um, yeah, I honestly I had it when we were talking. I was like, I needed to ask more about that, but it just completely slipped my mind. I have my questions. So let me take a look here. Okay, here it goes. So when you got hired, was like the hiring process already set in place, or does an HR is an HR person able to adjust that hiring process, or that whole thing? And then if you do adjust it, do you have systems that according like quickly adjust with it, or does it take time for, let's say you come in, you don't like the way the hiring process is, you change it, then you have to change the systems, then the system has to adjust for new type of application in like the processing way.
So it depends. Okay, so I'll answer the first part of your question. Yeah, I mean HR is just in charge of hiring, so they can make changes to the process at all. Like I've changed it since I was hired because I was like, it'll be easier if we, like I said, like now we're using Monday just to keep all the applicants organized. Where like previously, um, there wasn't really anything for that. It was kind of just like write down like, oh, this person applied, like, or like their emails in my inbox. So like I know that they were one of the applicants that we liked or something. So HR can change the process. It depending on the task, it could be automated, but it's also very task specific. So like for instance, we update it where like we have a phone interview, and then from there decrease who were apply or the applicants, and then have a virtual interview, and then from there decrease, and then a final interview where after that we pick who we want. So that wasn't always the process, but the only change, it's not automated, but it's only because that's like I'm emailing the people like you did well, we're going to move you to the next thing, like when are you ready to do another interview, or just be like thanks for applying, but you're like this just isn't a good fit, so like good luck. um
Okay, because like before I used to think like I guess beforehand, because I haven't talked to a lot of HRs because a lot of them are very, very busy. But I always thought like HR was like they come in and it's like a fixed, method of how they do it. So it makes it hard for them to kind of adjust it to like, let's say, more modern terms. And if they do, it doesn't get adjusted well enough for the applicant side. It may be more easier for the for HR person to do it, but I don't know how well it transitioned to like an easier application for those who are applying. So I still have to ask more questions on the other side to say, compare to like how many different application process they go through, which one are the easiest for them. But on your end, I want to ask you like, what are some of the complications besides like the manageable side, the company side? What are some of the main problems you come across with applicants and let's say their resumes or the way to go about applying or or going through the whole process with you?
so this might answer your question. One thing I find difficult is that whatever platform we're using to get applicants, like whether that's ZipRecruiter, Indeed, or like LinkedIn, um, the setup on our end of like the information we include in the description might change. Like sometimes it's like, oh, just upload a post. So it's like everything we've written, we just kind of copy paste in that. Other platforms are like, okay, what's the title? So we type that in, then it's like, what are the qualifications? Type that. What is the pay? Like, so it's all like kind of separate stuff. But of course, to the applicant, it's just kind of all there. And then one problem, I think because so many applicants just kind of apply to things across the board, like not, I just feel like it's less specific of like, oh, I came across this job, let me apply. It's kind of like, oh, here's all the like companies with the job title that I'm looking for. Let me just apply to them across the board.
Okay.
But then when you have like the phone interview or whatever, like move them on to the next process, they don't remember some of the like specifics about the company, like whether what the company does or what the posted salary was or some of that stuff, just because like they just applied to so many at once, like the specifics kind of get lost. So then like as the hire, you have to like go through all of those details again, kind of.
Okay, so on the applicant side, batch applications is easier for them. However, on your end, you start to realize that applicants are not, thoroughly analyzing what they're applying for. You're just hoping for a title and like a certain pay.
Yeah.
But they're not looking at qualifications. Okay, I see. Like I've never thought about that in general. Like because I've been on the applicant side a couple of times for different things, and I never fully like, oh wow, like because by the time the interview comes on, like you're already kind of like in a nervous mindset, and then you're thinking like, oh, geez, like personal side of like engineering, they have like certain qualifications. You're like, man, what is that system? What is that program even does? Like, so I definitely see what you're referring to. Um, you basically answered all of my questions that only focuses on just a problem, and that's the stage we're in right now. We haven't fully developed a solution. I want to know if it comes down to it uh, later on, if that's a part of our process with Anina and I'm doing. If we do build our solution, would I be able to just interview you again with possible solutions and see like if you can kind of work through it with me to see if it works on for HR, because I mean it may work for the applicants, but you like there's too many complications for HR side, just a way to just like bring my solution to more of a valid point and more of what really works.
Yeah, I'd be happy to give feedback or just talk through whatever potential solution you come up with.
Yeah, I gotta work on being more concise with the way I explain things, but
Oh no worries.
But thank you so much. I truly appreciate working with me rambling, different schedules, stuff like that. But I really appreciate you taking your time to answer these questions.
Yeah, happy to. If you have any other ones, just let me know.
Okay. See you. Have a nice day.
Goodbye. Thanks, you too. Bye.